the drone expert. It has nothing to do with bees. From an engineering standpoint, I look very much toward his presentation. John is originally from Thorntown, lives with his wife and daughter in Lebanon, and he works with a lot of kind of a liaison with Purdue University, works with Purdue University, I guess, and with Wabash Heartland Innovation Network, and I'm sure John can tell you what that's all about. Works with a number of faculty and Ivy Tech staff on projects relating to drones. Well, I heard a lot about potential for drones, and John's going to talk about current and potential impacts for drones. So, John?
Yeah. Yeah, so if you can't hear me, I'll try to keep this loud enough. So we're going to talk today about, like you said, the current and future impacts of drones. And when Donna asked, he said, we're an organization geared toward children. I'm thinking, okay, what are the impacts long term for children? Unfortunately, a lot of the video links were broke when I was moving things around. So we've got a few of them that we'll show you today. If push comes to shove, though, and we've got time, I do have my machine I use up here. So I do a lot of work for what I do in extension with agriculture. So I do a lot of digital ag work with the drones, flying fields, looking at different things in ag. So this is going to be a little bit different. This is a fun presentation to make because it's definitely outside of my wheelhouse. Some of the, just kind of be able to think about what is the future for this technology. And in a lot of ways, the future is really starting to become now. So this first example, right here, this came out, I think, yesterday or the day before. And what it is, it's from the Federal Aviation Administration. I don't expect you to be able to read all that fine print, but if you want to look it up, you can. But the FAA granted the rights to UPS, so United Parcel Service, to carry packages with drones. So this idea it's not new, right? Amazon came up with this in like 2013. They said, we want to start using these things for hauling packages. That was illegal until now in the United States. So we're getting there to that point where a lot of things that people have been thinking about this stuff is becoming more common and more practical. So what I want to talk about today and kind of hit on are some of the positive impacts I think of the technology. If we have time, I've got some other impacts as well that maybe not quite as a positive light, but definitely impacts. So the ones I want to focus on are delivery, which, as we just said, is now legal. So it's out of the future now, and it's into now. Healthcare, which is getting going. Safety, search and rescue, recreation, photography, law enforcement, and jobs. So delivery. This is an example of a drone that's designed specifically to deliver packages. This particular one is, they're hauling FedEx, but Wing is with Google. So Wing is Google's offering, so Alphabet's offering to this industry. This is a prototype. These are things that are just testing. Here's an example from UPS. Okay. A little bit different model, but you put a package at the bottom and you can haul. So that's delivery. This is a neat thing. I didn't know this even existed until I started working on this presentation. I knew they were using them in healthcare, but this particular piece of technology I didn't know existed. We've got a video that we'll show on this one. This is Zipline. So that's a fixed wing drone, and it has a parachute, as you can see there. So they'll fly it, and they're using this in Africa right now. The company's out of California, and they'll fly it to a hard-to-reach area, and they can drop the medicine or whatever, and it parachutes down to the ground, and they go pick it up and use it. Actually, here we go.
Rwanda is known as the land of thousand hills.
It's a very difficult country, and many areas are hard to reach.
Traversing that terrain to get to a rural village can take hours, even though it's a very short distance.
Today, if a mother is giving birth and suffers from postpartum hemorrhaging, Her life is dependent on getting a blood transfusion.
There are many different types of blood types that have a limited shelf life, and the challenge is when you need blood, you need it immediately, but it is unpredictable which geography that will occur in.
I gotta start
Hospitals that are in more remote areas can have a
Let's try it again. I double clicked it and I should have only clicked it once.
Rwanda is known as the land of a thousand hills.
It is a very difficult country in terms of topography, and many areas are hard to reach.
Traversing that terrain to get to a rural village can take hours, even though it's a very short distance.
Today, if a mother is giving birth and suffers from postpartum hemorrhaging, her life is dependent on getting a blood transfusion.
There are many different types of blood types that have a limited shelf life, and the challenge is when you need blood, you need it immediately, but it is unpredictable which geography that will occur in.
Hospitals that are in more remote areas can have a very hard time getting enough reliably supplied blood.
The time to order and get the supplies by truck is just too late.
There's no way that we can overcome the time that it takes to get anywhere during the rainy season. And people would say, okay, during the rainy season, we're just not going to make it.
The best case scenario will take at least 4 hours. But with Zipline, we're looking at cutting that 4 hours to something like 15 minutes.
It is a team of Rwandese who came together with Zipline to groom the project and to make it happen in Rwanda.
Their ultimate vision is to put each and every one of those 11 million citizens within a 15 to 35 minute delivery of any essential medical product that they could need. And that's a revolutionary idea for any country in the world.
The use of drones to deliver life-saving medical products can overcome the lack of road infrastructure. We need to let our imagination soar.
When you have a commodity, rare in supply, that might be an unusual blood type or something like a rabies vaccine, and you need it immediately, the idea that we could use a drone to be able to deliver this to the country is absolutely brilliant. There's nothing else that could do that in that way.
It is like we no longer go around hills, but we fly over the hills.
We pulled together a team from places like Boeing, SpaceX, Google, Lockheed Martin.
And it's an honor for Zipline to partner with the government of Rwanda.
We place a hub next to an existing medical warehouse, and it instantly enables that warehouse to make hundreds of deliveries per day to any location within range.
The doctor sends us their order by text, by phone call, whatever's convenient.
Somebody identifies the need and then prepares the package, puts it on the drone.
Then we take that vehicle and we put it through pre-flight tests. It's launched, flies automatically out to the clinic.
The path has been already calculated, it's in the computer.
And then they'll receive a text message saying, Zip is 2 minutes away, please walk outside.
It drops the packet, somebody goes and collects it.
It turns around, it flies home, and then we get it ready for the next delivery.
Our service not only makes it possible, but also affordable for countries to deliver reliable access to essential medicines for all of their citizens.
What you're looking forward to see here is saving lives.
This isn't a small step forward. This is a transformational change to how we provide medical care to people across the world.
So, pretty practical use.
Yeah.
In hard to reach areas. And I know even in this country, they're moving, even in this country, they're starting to do, move urgently needed medical things, organs. I read the other day, they put a heart in one and moved it from one place to another because they needed it that quickly, and it was easier to move it with a machine, one of these drones, than what it was to put it in a vehicle and cart it around. Here's another one. This is one that's it's a fairly new one. But they're getting it to where, this is donated organs. So they can actually put the organ inside that machine and haul it from A to B. They're getting some, and the idea is eventually, I think might be one of these, is a way to put a person in one of these. So instead of an ambulance, you could have a drone land, pick up the person, get up in the air, and fly to the nearest hospital. Faster than what you could if you had a ground-driven ambulance, without the risks associated with an ambulance trying to get through a busy intersection, getting stuck behind traffic, things like that. So they're looking at that, saying, okay, how can we do this? How can we use this technology for that? Safety, right? Safety is one of the most practical uses of these, and this is already happening in a lot of ways. So here's a picture how bridge inspections are done now, right? Crane up, suit up, harness up, and go underneath the bridge and take a look at things. They're getting to the point now where they're using these machines to do those bridge inspections and look. So you don't have to have a human in a cherry picker underneath the bridge and rappelling down. Wind turbines. That's the way that they've done it for a long time. You get a crew of people, you harness up, and you go and do those inspections. Now, this is a video from GE. They're using these machines to inspect those big turbines. And I know for a fact they're even doing this here in Indiana because I talked to a guy that works on them a couple months ago, up in White County. And he said, yeah, we have two people. We'd go up there, one guy'd harness up and he'd rappel down, and the other guy'd be on top, and then he'd come back up and the other guy'd harness up and rappel down. And that's how we did it. Anymore, he said, we don't do that. We take these up there. If we need to go up there, then we do. But if we can visually see what we need to see, we don't have to go up there and look. Safety towers, so cell towers, radio towers, any of those towers. You talk to tower climbers, and they get up there, and some of those things can be hundreds of feet tall. And those guys, gals that do that, that's what they're doing. They're harnessing it in, they're climbing these things. Now we have machines that we can do that with. Whether it's, like we have here, transmission lines or cell towers, we can get up there and take a look at these things. And then if we need to send a person up there to work on it, we can do that. One of these days, I will anticipate these machines, or a machine like them, will be able to work on it too, and you have a person on the ground that can man the robotic arm to make the repairs. We'll see. But I anticipate that being in the future. Roofing. That's a fairly common use, right? Everyone has a roof somewhere, right? If you have to get up there, I know I had to get up on my roof. I don't like it. Not really, especially some of these with vaulted ceilings. They get pretty steep. You can use these machines to look at those things. You can use these machines to go up there and say, is there enough hail damage up here? We can take pictures of that. You don't ever have to get up on the roof until it's actually time to take the shingles off and put new shingles on. Airplane inspection. This one here, the drone orbited around it, created this point cloud map to where they have small pixels of each, sub-inch really, of that airplane, so they can find even small cracks and small problems that a human might miss. These machines can do that pretty quickly. It says here, 90-minute inspection to half an hour. So you can cut down a lot of time and a lot of overhead by using these machines, where you can have the people, if there is a problem, they can fix it, instead of taking the time to do the inspection. Search and rescue. That's a pretty common use of them, even today. Using them for search and rescue. Here's an example. They found a guy, he's right here, hanging out of his house. They were able to find him with the drone, and then they knew where they needed to go send people. You guys have seen the news, after any hurricane, or anymore, you always hear, hey, the search and rescue guys, law enforcement, were using these machines to find these people straight on their rooftops. They go get them, they go rescue them before something really terrible happened. This is an interesting one. This is out of Iran. And they have these sea rescue drones. So each of these drones has inner tubes underneath here. So if you have someone that falls off of a ship, they can send the drone out there and drop the inner tube so they can grab a hold of it and have that life buoy. This is a video that's probably not going to play. But what this one was, it was a really neat thing. So what this group did, it was a group out of Sweden, I believe. And what they did is they took a bunch of drones, so a swarm of really tiny drones, things that would fit in the palm of my hand. And they programmed these things to where what they did is they made a rope ladder. These drones, this swarm of drones, made a rope ladder that was, or a rope bridge that was strong enough people could walk across it. It was fascinating. So if you get a chance, if I find the link, I'll send it to Dawn. If you get a chance, it's really cool to watch it because they show a video of it weaving this rope bridge together and then people walking across it. And They talk about a little bit about the science, how did they program that? How long did it take them to program all these machines to work together to build this bridge? And they said, practical use application number one. You have somebody stranded on a mountain and you need to get from A to B and it's too steep. These things can go out there and build a bridge quickly and you can get them from A to B. Recreation. This was going to be a video of people racing these things. So people love to race drones. It's for some reason. It's fun. Let's face it. It's fun. It's fun to make them go fast. As long as people have had anything, they like to race them, right? Horses, cars, you name it. Drones are the same way. So there are people that, there's a group, a company called Drone Racing League. And that's what they do. They go around the world and they race drones. And there are individuals that make a living racing drones. And it's kind of fascinating. The way they do it, they have goggles that they put on their face so they can see what the drone sees in real time. But they're moving so fast, and the video shows them. It kind of gives you a vertigo of how fast these guys are moving. But they have a lot of fun with it. So here's a good picture. So this is using a drone to go fishing.
It's cheating.
Yeah. But I know of some folks that have used these. This picture I just got offline, but I know of some folks, I've heard stories in Indiana of people have taken these out and put a lure on them and gone fishing with them. Not that I would recommend that, because most of these aren't waterproof. The one I use isn't waterproof. So if the fish is bigger than the drone strong, then I lose my drone. But it's a possibility. Just photography, right? General photography, and people that want to make a living as photographers. You can take pictures on the ground. You can take pictures in the air all of a sudden. It's even what you can do it with an airplane. Make it to where anybody can do it, right? So this is just a picture of a house. Kind of reminds me when I was growing up, there would be folks that would fly airplanes by, and the guy'd come up, or the folks would come up and knock on your door and say, hey, you want to buy this aerial picture? We have this beautiful aerial picture of your house. Well, we can do that right now without having to go through all the rest of the process. So, unfortunately for them, they're probably kind of priced out of the industry, but anybody can do that now. These things are great for marketing, for real estate people, real estate agents, things like that. Here's a company that's doing it. Now, these folks are weddings and receptions. Common use of this job. Law enforcement. Law enforcement's using these things a lot. This was a video of, it was down in the bayou, down in Louisiana, and they were tracking a runaway teen through a woods, through the swamps, and they found them with a thermal camera, and they just followed them, and they picked them up over on the road. I know in Clinton County, the sheriff's office has one. And I know that there was, last winter there was somebody that was a fugitive running, and they were able to track them at night in a sleet with the drone through a field and then pick them up on the other side when they came out of the field. So it's got extreme application for law enforcement, especially if you're trying to track someone that doesn't want to be found. That thermal camera technology is very expensive, very, very, very expensive, but it's got a lot of great uses. Another example, down in Ripley County, one of the educators was working with his law enforcement folks, and they had a thermal camera on the one. And somebody went out into the woods and just sat down. And they got down in the fetal position, tightened up. They were able to find them, go straight to them with the thermal camera. And he said, when we walked out there, you couldn't hardly see them. If we were just walking without knowing where to go, you would have walked right past them, because they had a ghillie suit on. They were all camouflaged up. He just laid in the leaves that had fallen down. Never would have found them. But because of their heat signature, they were able to. Fire, watching fires. Maybe not so much prevention yet, but going out into these areas, into these wilderness areas, and tracking, is there a fire, is there a wildfire, is there something we need to do? Eventually, maybe even as the swarm technology idea takes off, maybe helping fight fires and keeping firefighters out of the line of danger. But we're not to that point yet. Jobs. So what I did for this particular example, I just went to Indeed.com, just a common job search website. I typed in the word drone. That's it. The day I did that was 9/23 when I was working on this presentation. I got 2,102 total jobs. And this, I didn't set any restrictions for location, so it would be the United States mostly. 678 entry level with the keyword drone in them. A couple of those, what they were, right? Social media brand ambassador. So that marketing, that photography aspect. UAS drone pilot. So these people, site aware, they wanted someone to be a drone pilot. That's a job now. Okay? 5 years ago, that wasn't a job for a civilian. Drone pilot from this other company up here from Chicago wants to film real estate properties, inspections, and other related items. The U.S. Army, of course, wants military drone operators. Like I said, I'm an ag guy, so right here, near and dear to my heart. Indigo Research Partners Research Agronomist. They want to be Part 107 certified. Research Technology Lead, Bex Hybrids. Want them to have their 107 so they can fly commercially for a business operation. More jobs. These are looking at a little bit more. Surveyor. So just for a surveyor, this particular job pays $63,000 to $64,000 a year. They say, and they want them to, right there, highlighted, ability to use drone mapping and analyzing using software. An internship in an ag world. This is Wilbur Ellis. So an internship, the college age intern, they want to be 107 certified. When I say 107 certified, that is the license, the certification the FAA gives out. They don't give it out, you take a test and pay $150. But that's how you can fly these things commercially, legally in the United States. So it's coming to that. There are jobs out there. People can make a living by having this skill. Or it's expected as part of the other skills they have in order to make their living. With that, I don't know what I've got time-wise.
Got about 7 minutes.
Okay. Yeah, that's it. I can stop there. Do you have any questions? Yes.
If you want, if they want to deliver medicine up to a location in the mountains,
Mm-hmm.
how do they program it to get to where they want it to go? Do they use GPS coordinates?
Yes.
Or
Yep.
is there a pilot that is using a visual camera to spot where to go?
Yeah, so the question was, if they're flying to a remote location, like the mountains, how do they get it there, right? GPS is generally how they're going to do that. So as long as they have the lat long, which if they know where that location is, they can get the lat long, they'll just program that in. It'll be an automated flight. So the drone will know where it's at, right, GPS. They'll know where it needs to go. And generally, what they'll do is, when you program, the software will pick the best path. And it'll fly that and it'll turn around and fly back. I do the same thing. I have, not to that degree, but the one I use, we have stitching software where I can push some buttons and I tell it what I want it to do. And once I tell it what I want to do and I set up the job, I literally push 2 buttons and it flies the job and comes back and lands within a few inches of where it took off from.
Who pays for all this?
People. Pays for which one? For the people going to the mountains or for me?
Well, recipients of the benefits.
Well, it depends on the benefits, right? So if you're doing it commercially, like those jobs I talked about, is a commercial service. So it's a service. You're going to have customers that are going to pay you for this service, just like any other service job. Now for the government, if you have the government, if you're flying for that job, probably you're going to have government or taxes is what it boils down to in those instances. So like the military, when they fly, it's you and me. So he was up first, if that's okay.
How are those engines powered?
How the engine's powered?
Yeah.
It depends on the drone. So like the one I use is lithium polymer batteries. They have gas-powered ones as well. The ones that we saw there, I don't know what those were powered with. It looked like a battery of some sort. Yeah, it looked like a battery. I don't know what type of battery, but it looked like it was electrical motors. Most of them, the majority of them are electrical motors. As you get a bigger payload, they'll switch up to gas or something like that. Yes, sir.
Does each of these things have a pilot that will monitoring, correcting threats?
It depends. In the United States, you are going to have a pilot on hand by law if you're doing it legally. Watching, yes, watching, keeping an eye on the machine, keeping an eye on the airspace. As they start changing the rules, although that's the rules right now. Now, to deliver packages, I haven't read into that enough yet to know if they've allowed them to fly what's called beyond visual line of sight, so they can fly past where they can see. Right now, I can only fly as far as I can see the drone. So as soon as I can no longer see the drone, I can't go any further by law. But if I can fly beyond visual line of sight, then I've got to rely on other ways to track the machine. For the most part, though, once it's automated, you're going to just let it do its thing. Yeah. Yes, sir.
What altitude are they allowed to fly at?
Again, it depends on the country. In the United States, it's 400 feet for Part 107 to be commercial. Other countries don't necessarily have laws for that. So it depends where you're at and what within their sovereign airspace, right? To where, I mean, the one I've got, technically, I can go as high. It'll fly within 4 miles before I start losing radio frequency contact. So in theory, it doesn't really matter whether I go 4 miles that way or I go 4 miles that way. But my ceiling set by the FAA is 400 feet. And the reason they do that is most air traffic is going to be 500 above, usually 1,000 above, depends on helicopters. But there are countries, especially like in Rwanda, where they might not have a set rule of law of you can only fly X feet high or whatever. It does depend on that government. Yes, ma'am.
I'm assuming they have some kind of restrictions around the airspace or airports?
Mm-hmm. In this country, again, yes. Other countries, I can't speak to that. I don't know. It depends on the country. Here, yes, for sure. So Purdue actually has restrictions. So if you're within 5 miles of the Purdue airport, you have to have permission to fly in that airspace. It's called Class D. So Indianapolis is Class C. It's a different type. And then like Chicago O'Hare, they're even got what they call Class B. So the bigger the airport, the more traffic, the more restrictions you're going to have. Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
Now these drones are available for hobby purchases and obviously for commercial use. What kind of licenses are needed for commercial flyers?
Yeah. So for commercial flyers, all you need is the 107 certificate.
And where would they get that?
So you would go take a test. It's a 60-question multiple choice test at what they call a testing center, or a knowledge testing center. Purdue has one. So the closest one here would be the Purdue Airport. But the FAA's got that all on their website. So, yes, sir.
In your opinion, what's the cost of a good drone that you should be getting for recreational for flying?
What I want to do with it is usually what I ask. I mean, are you going to use it for just for fun?
Yeah, yes, recreational.
Hopefully not. Recreational, if you want one that's decent, that's, are you going to fly indoors or outdoors? Is the other question.
Outdoors.
Outdoors. You're going to be looking, well, because if some of them, the really, really cheap ones are so light, if you have just a sniff of wind, it's gone. And it'll go. Trust me, I know. I've been there, done that. It'll crash. $50 to $100, I would say. Yeah, for a recreational one. When I talk to people for an ag one, or if they want to go up and look at some fields, or they want to go up and look at a roof line or something, you're going to want to spend at least $5. There's the one that's out there for $500. That will give you a pretty good picture. But yeah, 50 to 100, you could get one that would be fairly stable in a light wind. If you have much wind, it'll take off on you, but it'll be okay in a light wind. I've got a couple of those that we use. We use, in extension, we use those for trainers. So we use those to help people learn how to use the machines. Yes, sir.
We've got all these benefits. What's the downside?
Well, that's the next half of my talk. I mean,
Okay, we'll wait.
Yeah, one of the big issues right now still is privacy.
Exactly.
That component, and it's not really addressed in the law necessarily, but privacy is a big concern. You know, the way the law is written in airspace, you could fly over somebody's house without you. If I flew over your house and you shoot my drone at me, you're to blame, not me.
Like I could hit it.
Now, if I fly over your house and I look in your window, that's a different story entirely. A lot of times that can be something to local laws. But if I was looking in your window, then you would have more rights to react, and I would be to blame. But privacy is definitely something the industry is trying to grapple with, and that is definitely one of the downsides. And then, like any technology misuse, right? The potential for misuse. What happened in Saudi Arabia, for example, right? The oil refinery was attacked by drones, and they bombed it and made a mess. That is definitely one of the downsides of this technology.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think I'm out of time, so if you guys have any more questions, I'll be around for a little bit.